regular meeting of the Detroit Lake City Council is called to order, and I'd like to invite all of you to please stand and join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of the regular city council meeting held November 13th and the special city council meeting held on November 29th, 2018. Is there anyone in the audience or any member of the council that wishes to make any changes to the minutes as they're printed? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion for their approval.
So moved.
Seconded.
Motion's made and seconded to approve the minutes of the regular city council meeting held November 13th and the special council meeting held November 29th, 2018. Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. The consent agenda is before the council, and all items with an asterisk are considered to be routine by the city council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member or citizen so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the general order of business and considered separately in its normal sequence of the agenda. Is there anyone in the audience or any member of the council that wishes to either add or remove an item from the consent agenda? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as printed. So moved.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries. There are no public hearings this evening, and so we'll move to the Community Development Committee. Before I do that, at 6:01, we have to have our budget presentation. What do we call it? The Truth and Taxation hearing. So if the meeting gets done before 6:01, we gotta wait. Just giving you a heads up.
State law.
Yep, okay. Ron, Community Development.
Okay, first item, 5A, consideration to a resolution setting a public hearing for the proposed vacation of public road right-of-way at 520-544 South Shore Drive, Holcomb Beach and Holcomb Beach, first edition. This is to vacate the entire stretch. Larry, did you want to say anything about this?
Well, it's a stretch of public road right-of-way that's in these plats. It's located out by the landing on South Shore Drive.
But our action is just, we're just gonna set the hearing, right, Ron?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. You got a motion?
Okay, the committee recommends for setting hearing, I so move.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded to set a public hearing for the next regular city council meeting in January for the purpose of conducting a public hearing for the proposed vacation of a public road right-of-way at 520 through 544 South Shore Drive. Discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed, the motion carries.
Next item B, consideration of resolution setting a public hearing for the proposal of a vacation of the dedicated public road section 28-32-33, range 41 west, township 139 north. This property is also known as the Testman property. It's to set a public hearing. The committee recommends and I so move.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to set a public hearing for our January regular council meeting for the proposed vacation of the property known as the Testman property. Now, is that on the west side of 59 or the east side? Isn't there Testman on both sides?
There's
West
There's an old road right-of-way that ran from the end of what we call Airport Road across the western side of Old Lake St. Clair to the 259. So what we're talking about is a trail. It doesn't really actually exist as a road. That is on the west side of Highway 59 between there and the airport. And the purpose of this is for the airport expansion.
Further discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Item C, consideration to a resolution setting a public hearing for the proposed vacation of a dedicated public road State Street east of West Avenue, adjacent to 623 West Avenue and 701 West Avenue. The committee recommends for the public hearing, and I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to set a public hearing for a January regular council meeting for the proposed vacation of a dedicated public road, State Street east of West Avenue. And just Could I just ask for an explanation where that is too, if we could?
Larry, do you wanna give an update on that?
That is,
More than I'm curious than anything?
that is State Street between West Avenue and the Sioux Line tracks, or the Sioux Line property.
Discussion on the motion. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, item D, consideration of resolution, set a public hearing for a proposed vacation of the dedicated public road on Front Street east of West Avenue adjacent to 723 West Avenue and 801 West Avenue. The committee recommends for the hearing, I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to set a public hearing for our January regular council meeting for the proposed vacation of the dedicated public road, Front Street east of West Avenue. Discussion on the motion. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Next item E, consideration to a resolution to approve an amended conditional use permit to allow construction of a 401 square foot addition to the dining room area at Lincoln Park with a 20-foot setback as part of the medical campus at 208 Oak Street, St. Mary's Regional Health Center. Larry, do you want to explain this a little better on that?
Yeah, this conditional use permit would allow St. Mary's to add a 401 square foot addition to the dining room at Lincoln Park with a 20-foot setback from Oak Street. Under their current conditional use permit, they're required to have a 30-foot setback, but they want a variance from that to allow this 20-foot setback for this addition.
Okay. Do we have a motion, Ron?
Okay, the committee recommends and I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve an amended conditional use permit to allow construction of a 401 square foot addition to the dining room at Lincoln Park with a 20-foot setback as part of the medical campus at 208 Oak Street. Discussion on the motion. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Next item is F, consideration to resolution approving the final plat of Highland Estates at 1335 Highland Drive, Bob Spillman property. The committee recommends and I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the final plat of Highland Estates at 1335 Highland Drive. Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Item G, consideration of the first reading of ordinance number 435, amending section 3 of the zoning ordinance relative to requiring screening of buildings in commercial districts in the shoreline district. And Larry, maybe you can give us a recap.
The planning commission has discussed this recommendation a couple of times. They came up with the proposal that the plantings be at least 6 feet tall when they're planted and that they grow to a height of at least 50% of the tallest structure that's on the site. A lot of the discussion centered around the size of plantings when you start, and generally we don't want to have too large of plantings because they don't succeed very well if they're too large, and they take a long time to start growing if they're very large when you plant them. So they came up with this proposal.
Okay. And we'll need a motion, Ron.
Okay, the committee recommends and I so move.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to give first reading of ordinance number 435, amending section 3 of the zoning ordinance relative to required screening of buildings in commercial districts in the shoreline district. Discussion on the motion?
Mayor, I'd just like to say thank you for Larry and the people that worked on this. I was looking for something larger when this originally came up, higher than 50%. With the research we've done and what Larry's work has done, it sounds like it's a better situation now with going with a smaller tree that has a better chance to root and grow into something larger. So that changed my mind, so thank you.
Further discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye. Opposed? The motion carries and first reading is given, and we'll have the second reading on our agenda in January.
Okay, next item H, consideration to a second reading and adoption of ordinance number 434 for the annexation of a 60.3 tract of land in Detroit Township and zoning the tract I-1 light industrial at the County Highway 21, also known as Cleveland Farm and Atkins Equipment, partial numbers 08-0391-000, 08-0394-000, 08-0393-000, and 08-0390-000, and the easterly one half of County Highway 21. And Larry, anything you wanna say to that? It's pretty self-explaining on that.
It's self-explanatory. We had the public hearing last month. I think it makes sense to finally annex this portion of property into the city of Detroit Lakes.
Okay.
Okay, the committee recommends, and I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to give second reading and adopt ordinance number 434 for the annexation of the area known as the Cleveland Farm Atkins Equipment. I won't read off all those numbers. Discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Second reading is given and ordinance 434 is adopted. We're gonna get done way before 6:01, aren't we?
I think so, I only have
Should I
one.
slow
item.
down?
Can I maybe do a preview?
Anything else, Ron?
None, Your Honor.
I was kinda hoping you had some more. We'll go to the Public Works. Jay?
All right, item A, consideration to a resolution supporting the grant application for the Mountain Link Trail Project Phase 3 and providing 50% of the required match. Looks like we're contributing $38,000 for matching for the county grant. Anything else you wanna say to that? Kelsey?
Again, these are transportation alternative funds, so it'd actually be 5 years out. It's a kind of a long window for those applications, but again, this would be basically getting the link from Randolph and 54 up to DMRA. So
I can waste some more time. What is a transportation alternative grant, sir?
it's federal funding that's distributed to the state. Help me out, John. Federal funding.
It's some federal funds that MnDOT administers. It's just one of the pots of money that we have to go after trails and other things that are transportation related but not roadways.
So it can't be a road,
Cannot be a road.
because it'd be nice if that road was paved that goes from 8th Street out, you know,
Oh, that
the
wouldn't
back
qualify.
road,
Yep.
you know?
Yep, I know what you're saying, but that would not qualify.
This is the same program that is funding the Westlake Drive Trail connection from Legion to County Road 6.
Nice.
Okay, Jay?
Public Works recommends approval, and I so move.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve a resolution supporting the grant application for the Mountain Link Trail Project Phase 3 and providing 50% of the required match. Discussion on the motion. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries.
That's all, sir.
Okay.
You know, one thing that's kind of interesting, since we have time here to kind of plug, you know, what's gonna happen down, on the city beach area with the winter, we're gonna have snow sculptures again, and they're gonna be on display near the pavilion, starting January 4th through February 20th, and that's with the high school students and other students like we had last year, so there'll be some activity down there for people to look at in the winter, if we get some more snow.
Right, good. Okay, we'll move to the Finance Committee. Dan?
Well, items A and C need to wait for 6:01. Item B was just a discussion about the lease agreements that are coming up next year, but the discussion really focused on how we're gonna, that we need a new Zamboni here in 2020 and how we might pay for that. So nothing concrete yet, just a discussion on that. But those Zambonis cost $150,000, so they're not inexpensive, but you gotta have them. So we'll have some more discussion on that and something in the contract next year.
Okay.
Of course, that'll be the next chair's problem.
Oh, goodness.
By the way, I handed out the new committee assignments. If anybody has a real bad indigestion over it, let me know, okay? Anything else in finance, Dan?
Not Your Honor.
Public safety, do we have anything tonight, Matt?
There was nothing, everything was on the consent agenda, sir.
Kelsey, any update on our legislative bill for the new police station with the sales tax funding?
Yeah, Mayor and Council, As you know, the referendum was passed. The next step is we need special legislation to authorize the city to basically implement that 0.5% sales tax. I've been in contact with both Representative Markport and Senator Eakin. Basically, they'll be prepared to draft that bill and get it submitted at the start of the legislative session. So hopefully all goes well. We'll get the special legislation during this year's session. After that, there's still some process we have to do. We have to submit to the Department of Revenue some certification and notice of our intent to start collecting that sales tax. I would say the best case scenario, the earliest that it could be done is maybe we'd be collecting the sales tax for, it has to be at the start of a quarter. So it'd be maybe fourth quarter of 19 or first quarter of 2020.
And then our tentative plans for construction of the new facility are 2020?
Yes, the bulk of the construction would be in 2020. Maybe we could do some civil work yet to 19, but again, you know, if all stars align, maybe we could start a little bit earlier, but I think the safe bet is probably see construction in spring of 2020.
Okey doke, thank you. That's it for the finance, right, Dan, until we go back to the budget and tax levy stuff, right?
Yeah, I could just mention though that, we've reviewed our food and beverage tax collection so far this year, and through November, we're up 9.3%, which we put towards bike trails, parking lots, and keeping invasive species out of the lakes. That's good news. The liquor store is doing, I'm sorry, that was the liquor store is up 9.3%, but it's doing really well. November was a really good month. We were up 14%. I can only attribute that to people getting together with their relatives for Thanksgiving. I know I drink more. It helps.
Makes it more tolerable, right?
And I'm sure they have the same sentiment, by the way. So, and then of course the food and beverage tax receipts are also up so far for the year 5.41%. So we're doing well there too.
Good. Thank you for bringing that up. Okay, nothing on public safety. Let's go to the liquor gambling control. Jamie?
Item 9A is discussion regarding proposed amendments to the city's liquor ordinances pertaining to liquor and wine licensing and consumption and possession of liquor and beer. And I've called on Charlie Ramstad, the city attorney, to just highlight those changes.
Feel free to be as long as you need.
Well, I was gonna try to just do a little summary of this, but I suppose I could read through the whole thing.
Just kidding.
Okay, so I think the proposed ordinance changes are in front of you. And I'm gonna kind of go through a little bit of a summary about it. The Liquor and Gambling Control Committee's been working on this for quite a few months. And we've gone back and forth with different drafts. Even now, we have a couple of little tweaks maybe that we might want to do before we end up having a first reading. And so I'm going to kind of go through those. But to just kind of step you through what these proposed changes are, if you looked at that on the screen, we're making a variety of different changes, all to section 702 and 704 of the ordinance, which are the provisions of the ordinance that allow us to issue liquor and wine licenses, and also provisions of the ordinance that allow for consumption and possession of alcohol in public spaces. And so just to step through 70202, the first change, we're essentially bringing the ordinances, our own ordinances in to be consistent with state statute. State statute allows a theater to be able to get a liquor license. Our ordinance did not. And so the first change to 70202 subdivision 2 is just to make our ordinance consistent with state statute to allow for a on-sale liquor license to be issued to bowling centers and theaters as defined by the state statute. Similarly, the second change to 70202 subdivision 3 essentially makes that change with regard to wine and malt liquor licenses. And so it also makes a change that deletes a requirement for those that it be sold in conjunction with the sale of food. The third change, our ordinances are much more restrictive on what qualifies as a club and a veteran organization. Our ordinance currently says that those organizations have to be in existence for 15 years and a veterans organization in existence for 10 years before they could obtain a club license. The state statute says that that should be 3 years instead of 10 and 15. And so the proposal changes that section of the ordinance to just make it consistent with state statute again, a 3-year requirement that they have to be in existence before they're entitled to a license. The fourth change, we issue temporary on-sale licenses to clubs and charitable organizations, religious and nonprofit organizations. That's consistent with state statute, and it's also consistent with our ordinance. The state statute goes further than that and allows us to issue temporary licenses or on-sale licenses to political committees and state universities. We thought that that might be a reasonable change to our ordinance to make it consistent with state statute. I don't know that we would have a political convention here, but if we do, it would allow us to issue a license to them, and we do have a state university. I don't know that M-State has any desire to get a temporary liquor license, but if they did, this change would allow them to be able to do that. 705 is my favorite, for the fifth one. The fifth change is my favorite. Our existing ordinance, 70207, subdivision 1, prohibits the issuance of liquor license to any premises that has swinging doors or opaque windows. I'm not really sure where that came from. I don't think I'm old enough. In any case, it didn't make much sense to us, and so we are proposing to change our ordinance so that premises that do have swinging doors and opaque windows would qualify for liquor licenses. It always makes me think of the old Western, cold in the winter. 702, or the sixth change, 70208, basically is a requirement or a request that I have. It's an enforcement issue, and I'm asking and want the ordinance to say that the issuance of a license can be conditioned upon the agreement by the applicant to pay the city's costs and disbursements and attorney's fees associated with enforcing provisions of the license for violation of that license. Minnesota law prohibits collection of costs unless you have some provision whereby the applicant agrees to that, right? And I think it should be a condition of a license, because if we're required to bring a civil action to enforce the ordinance, that's going to cost the city money. We have to pay a court filing fee for a civil filing fee to the court administrator's office. And it always seems to me to not make sense that we cannot get reimbursement of those costs from someone violating the ordinance. So what this change would do would entitle the city to reimbursements of its expenses that it incurs in enforcing the provisions of the ordinance against someone who's violating the ordinance in a civil action. Right now, our only real recourse is a criminal violation, and that really doesn't work very well. It's not a very good enforcement tool. It's not that we shouldn't have it, but it's difficult to use. The seventh change is a change that alters the provisions of our current ordinance relative to temporary expansion permits. Right now, our ordinance allows what we call a temporary expansion permit to be issued for a sidewalk cafe. And essentially, it is an area adjoining an existing license holder's premises that is outside the premises on the public right-of-way on the sidewalk. We have, at least to my knowledge, 2 places where we do that, or have done it anyway. The Roasted, I think, has a temporary expansion, and Gloria, you can correct me if I'm wrong. And then prior to that, I think Barista did on the sidewalk in front of the Barista. I don't know if they currently have one of these permits. What this change would do would allow the areas where we could issue a temporary expansion permit to be broadened to include other areas of the premises. So for instance, a parking lot. One example, like for instance, would be Lakeside's parking lot. If they wanted to have a temporary expansion permit for an event to serve out in that parking lot, this ordinance change would allow them to do it. it would allow it to be expanded into any license on land either owned by the license holder or leased by the license holder pursuant to a written lease with a minimum term of 30 days. We just wanted to make sure there wasn't somebody who could lease someplace for a day and get a temporary expansion permit. This actually has to be a real lease where there's a real term to it. And a fair number of the businesses might have a lease situation where they own, where they don't own the premises, but they lease it. And so these provisions in all of the 702.1.2 changes essentially are areas where are changes to the ordinance which just allow us to accommodate that, to a change beyond just sidewalk. So it removes the specific reference to a sidewalk. You can still have the expansion permit on a sidewalk, but you can also have it to other areas of your premises, but you cannot expand into the roadway. So it does not allow an expansion onto a street. We made some changes to ordinance 704. 704 is a consumption and possession of liquor and beer ordinances. And let's just say that the current way that the ordinances are drafted raised some question as to whether or not a street dance can occur. Okay? And as the council is aware, we've had some requests in the last couple of years for street dances. So the changes to ordinance 704 are changes that will all allow the council by permit, in other words, you still have to get a permit, to be able to hold a street dance, but they are changes which would allow a street dance that would allow alcohol to be served on the street for an event like that, and that would also allow the person who's purchasing that beverage to be able to possess it, because right now our current ordinance doesn't allow someone to possess an alcoholic beverage in the public right of way, streets, boulevards, or in the park areas, and this would allow us to do that. Now, if you really want me to take up more time, I can go through and read all of those various changes in detail, but I suspect you don't. If anybody has any question about any of the specifics of any of this, though, I'm more than happy to go into details with regard to answers to the questions.
Any questions for Jerry?
Yeah, I was just gonna get to that, but, go ahead.
Just going to add to that, so amendments to a liquor ordinance require notification to current liquor license holders, a 30-day notice, so that notice has been sent. So the first reading and public hearing is scheduled for the January city council.
And I'm gonna go on a little bit. We did have a couple of other items come up with regard to this in our discussions today at Liquor Control, which I think are good suggestions, and I think the committee thought was a good suggestion. Our current ordinance says that the minimum size of a restaurant, so we can issue liquor licenses to restaurants, has to have a seating capacity of 90 persons. The state statute doesn't require that. The state statute just says that we have to have a seating or a minimum seating requirement, but doesn't tell us what it is. My take on it today was that the committee suggests that we modify that to a 40-person minimum. And so I think that would go into the first reading unless someone has an objection. Apparently also, the state statutes have changed to allow much stronger wine. I'm gonna give Kelsey credit for finding this, but apparently there is wine up to 24% alcohol by volume. Our current ordinance restricts wine license to 14%. So we're talking about making an additional change which would allow the sale of wine up to 24% alcohol. And again, that would go into the first reading in January unless somebody has some objection to it.
Okay. Any questions for Charlie?
I've got a question that was regards to the street dances, and you mentioned that liquor could be out on the streets, and you said also in the parks.
Yeah, this change would allow permits, street dances to be issued for areas. Right now, we have things that we prohibit it in the public right-of-way, street or designated for particular traffic, sidewalk, parking lot, alleyway, or areas within, other areas within the city that are public. Right now, we allow we prohibit it in the city park. This would allow us to issue a permit to do that within the city park. It doesn't require it, but it would allow it. So in other words, we're not talking about making it legal for just somebody to have a beer on the beach or a beer in the park. This would only be in conjunction with an event where there was a permit issued.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Further questions? So Jamie, we won't take any action. It'll be on the agenda for first reading next month. I was worried about you, Bruce. I tried calling you. I thought maybe you were in the ditch.
Well, thanks for being worried about me.
You're welcome.
Don't talk to my face, please.
Okay.
Apologize for being late.
We've been kind of dragging things out because we can't have our truth and taxation till 6:01, so.
So if you'd care to do the Pledge of Allegiance by yourself.
I apologize for being late.
Okay, Jamie, I'm sorry.
Item 9B was discussion only, no action. Item 9C is consideration to approve the sponsorship of the 2019 Let's Go Fishing Program. The committee recommends a sponsorship of $500, and I so move.
Second. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the sponsorship of the 2019 Let's Go Fishing Program. In the amount of $500 out of the liquor fund. Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Anything else, Jamie?
Mayor,
Okay.
one question.
Yeah.
Going back to 9B, if we do anything different there with that noise ordinance, is that by first and second reading then?
Yes.
It would be, okay, thank you,
Yeah, so we would tentatively have first reading in January.
thank you.
Is there any notification requirement for the noise thing?
Not required.
Madeline, was there anything from the public utilities you want to bring to the council?
There was none.
So I have a question about 9B also, if you don't mind going back to that. I mean,
That's fine.
I know notification isn't required, but do you think it's something we would want to do? I mean, there's some people that are being affected by this and to have their input. I mean, have we gone through that in the past with some of the establishments that'll be affected by the noise?
I don't know what was, it's been amended in the past, I don't know what was done in the past, I mean, it's council's discretion if you want us to.
We did have this, informational meeting, and some of the changes discussed today were the result of those informational meetings, but you're correct in that we have not specifically notified them of these proposed changes.
Bruce?
Well, I support Mr. Sherman. I think at least we ought to get the word out somehow to the establishments and the general public that we're talking about. I agree with that.
Well, we can sure ask the press to make a note of it, but also maybe we should send a letter out to the bars and restaurants that, that we think would be affected by this, so.
And again, typically, unlike the liquor ordinance changes that requires a public hearing, typically the noise ordinance wouldn't require a public hearing per se either, but obviously it would still come to liquor and gambling committee.
Yeah, there's not that many. Let's go ahead and do it, shall we?
Do it as a public hearing or
No,
just send out notice?
send out a letter that it's gonna be on the agenda, discussion about changes to the city's noise ordinance. Okay. I've got a few appointments I'd like to make to some of our advisory commissions. Holly Heiser is willing to serve another term on the library board, and I would like to recommend her name, Holly Heiser, to be reappointed.
So moved.
Second. Motion's been made and seconded to reappoint Holly Heiser to the library board. Discussion. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Susan Bjorkman has indicated to me that she wants to resign at the end of her term from the planning commission. I'd like to recommend the name of John Thorpe to replace Susan Bjorkman.
I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to appoint John Thorpe to the planning commission. Discussion on the motion. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. I had talked to Clayton Schott earlier, and he has indicated that it's likely that he's not gonna renew, but I wasn't able to connect with him. I wanna
He-
double check before I.
He did indicate at the last
Oh, he
planning
did,
commission
okay.
that he would not serve again.
Okay, well then I'll have to get a
And I
replacement.
got a note to talk to you about that. So
Okay. Also, something that's not on the agenda, Joyce Duffney has resigned from the HRA board, and How long was Joyce on there, Ron? Sure. 20 years?
20-some years, yeah.
So we're losing a great person on there, but Mary Haney has agreed to serve on our Housing and Redevelopment Authority Board, and I'd like to recommend Mary Haney to serve on that board.
So move.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to appoint Mary Haney to the HRA Board. Discussion on the motion. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Madeline Suki is eligible to be on the Public Utilities Commission for another term, and I'd like to recommend that we reappoint Madeline to the PUC.
So move.
Second. Motion's been made and seconded to reappoint Madeline Suki to the Public Utilities Commission. Discussion on the motion. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Brooks Larson has resigned from the Detroit Country Club Board, and I'd like to recommend the name of Rhonda Fody to be appointed to replace Brooks Larson on the Detroit Country Club Board.
So move.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve Rhonda Fody to the Detroit Country Club Board. Discussion on the motion. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. And Glory, here I've got Rhonda and John's contact information, if you'd like to take that.
Okay, I'll grab it.
Okay. We're gonna have a little appreciation celebration for Barb's last meeting tonight. I don't see a cake back there, though.
No, there's cookies.
Cookie, all right.
Did you say cake or cake? I
Cake.
missed it.
Hey, G. So, along that, with Barb, I've got something I'd like to present to Barb, and I'll read it first here. It's a certificate of appreciation for Barb Voss, 4 years Alderman at Large, whereas the municipal representative government of the city of Detroit Lakes, ever conscious of its obligation to efficiently and justly conduct the affairs of the city of Detroit Lakes, and whereas the fulfillment of this obligation and the performance of this service requires the dedication of concerned citizens, now therefore be it resolved that the city council and citizens of the city of Detroit Lakes express in this way gratitude and appreciation for the many hours of faithful service you have contributed to our community and to the city of Detroit Lakes, together with the hope that your service of 4 years as Alderman at Large may be reflected and persuade others to follow your example. So thank you. Let's see here, we've got the Canadian Pacific Holiday Train coming to town on Thursday at 2:30. I wish it was coming a little later so we could see the lights a little better, but it's always a fun event, so put it on your calendar. The City of Detroit Lakes will host the next joint governance meeting on January 22nd at 7 a.m. here at City Hall. And the balance of the 2019 joint governance meeting dates are also listed there, and also the City Council meeting dates. And I see here, Dan, the regular and annual meeting is on the same day, January 8th, 2019. I thought we were required to have it on a different day.
No,
No?
just the first.
Okay,
2 minutes.
all right. Also, we have Natalie Bly is in attendance tonight. Natalie's a new council member who will be sitting up here on January 8th, I guess, right? So, So, we have to wait a little bit before we can have our taxation. Have you got more stuff?
One
Go ahead, Matt.
question, Mayor, is we can't let Mr. Pratt off this easy.
Yeah, you can.
There was, as it was announced with the Weston Willow project, I've heard a couple people ask about the silent zone with the railroad through there. Any news on that?
Well, actually, a good point. We've got a meeting scheduled with SRT consultant that's helping us through this, and then there's railroad and different agencies getting together for our first meeting on December 20th, Celsius?
Yes.
Is that right?
Yep.
20th.
Okay.
So that'll sort of just kick that process off. I would expect that, within, I'm hoping a couple of months, we'll have a handle on if it's gonna be feasible, possible to move ahead with something like that.
Okay.
It could be very simple things that we need to incorporate into the West Avenue project and fill out a lot of paperwork and go off to the races, or it could be a bit more involved.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
more to come.
On your desk is a a flyer for the legislative action day. So if anybody's interested in going, I'm sure Kelsey will be going down and we'll have to see if I'm able to make it. But if anybody would like to go down, it's an interesting and very effective thing to be a part of, so.
Let me know if you're interested in going down, okay?
Yeah. What else do we have here?
Um,
Go ahead.
It wasn't on the agenda, but I think we've nailed down our date for our strategic planning session. It'll be Friday, January 11th, and we'll start at 7:30 a.m. So that's the same week as council, so council on Tuesday, and then strategic planning that Friday morning.
And we're gonna start out with, what's the format gonna be in some of the items for?
So the tentative format would be, again, we start at 7:30. I think it'd be worthwhile to review our last plan that, remember, we did back in 17. We made a lot of progress on the goals that we set back in 17, so I think it's good to review the status of that.
Is that something you could send out to everybody in advance?
Yep.
Following that, we'll probably get into kind of like called the nuts and bolts kind of section of the meeting. We'll talk about our capital improvement plan. John Pratt will help probably with that, and look at our 5-year CIP along with also what our building project plan is for the next few years. We'll also look at kind of the trail master plan, what we have coming up for the next few years. With that, we'll probably have a short break, and then we have contacted a representative from Missouri River Energy Services to facilitate kind of a goal setting session with the council and staff. And that will be kind of the second half of the morning, and hopefully we'll wrap it all up by noon.
Go ahead, Bruce.
Well, in the past, we've invited Development Authority, Public Utilities, Park Board members, members of some of those major committees. I would appreciate if we could extend an invitation to them also. There's a lot of times we talk about things that are affecting those communities.
Was that in the plans, or?
It's your strategic planning session, so.
I think we've traditionally always done that, so I mean, I think it's appropriate that, we'll quote from those. Any update on, where we're at, and timeline on the new public works facility? We talked quite a bit about the new police department, but what about the public works facility?
So our next step is actually next Monday. Our Public Works Committee, we're going to take a tour of some other public works facilities. We're going to stop in Medina. Medina just built a new joint public works and electric warehouse. We'll start there, and then we'll journey down to Wade Park. Has a relatively new facility. And the reason why we picked those two is that they have a pretty good contrast between construction types. One is a steel building, the other one's a precast concrete building. And that's kind of where we're at with the committee is, I think we all would prefer the precast, but there's a significant cost upgrade to do it. So I think it'd help to get into those buildings and see the pros and cons of each. And then probably the next step is getting into another contract with the architect. We kind of had a preliminary contract with them to do some initial work. We need to execute kind of a full design contract yet with the architect. That'd be the next step, so we work on design.
When do we anticipate we would start construction?
It depends which option we choose. I mean, again, it comes down to price tag and funding and affordability.
Okay. Anybody else have anything for the good of the order? Otherwise, we're just gonna have to adjourn and reconvene at 6:01. Brad?
I just want to mention, we have a long-term employee, Brian Sandberg.
Okay.
He's retiring after 30 years of dedicated service to the city, done a very good job, very hard worker, handles all kinds of equipment, and after 30 years, that experience, you'll miss him, but his last day will be January 11th.
You gonna invite me to come to the
Yes, I told him he had to
festivities?
meet with you and accept a plaque from you, so.
All right.
I told him how appreciative the council is for all the work and that they've done. And he doesn't want a big blown out event, but I am inviting the council and some of the committees and noon on January 11th, we will be having a small celebration and lunch.
Okay. And I saw that we're gonna have a new park down on the south side of the lake.
Yes, we are, and that is really exciting. I thought that we had a nice article in the paper, just, the picture is the wrong side of the road is all.
Was it?
We don't have the open field, we're into it, but I thought it was a nice article, well done, and it is exciting that we're gonna be able to finally have something, you know, the park board works very hard in their long-range planning and studying of where to locate things. As we know, the money's limited, what we have to invest in that. And we realized with the quadrants and study we've done, that area of the city has, doesn't have much as far as facilities such as like our parks and the slides and swings and stuff. And so it's really exciting that we're able to work that out with swapping land and working things out to get enough land that we can do something really, I think, quite dynamic and have an impact for the people on that side of our community.
Yeah, Vicki, that was a good article, and also,
I didn't write that one.
no, but I'm complimenting you as a
I will pass
representative
it
of
on.
the newspaper. It was
Yeah.
also a good article about the economic situation in Detroit Lakes. It was just in the paper the other day, and I'm gonna use some of that in my State of the City address, I think. Good stuff.
Good, thank you.
Ron?
I was just gonna say, for people, if you're out driving around, go over and take a look at the Boys and Girls Club. It's really coming in shape here after the last 5-6 days. They've got some walls up, and they're doing a lot of steel work over there, but continue down 34 across the Mem State. They're going to town on that assisted living for 70 units over by Mahoobie, and they're really going to work on that real fast too. And of course, the wastewater treatment plant continues work, so we've got some great projects going in Detroit Lakes, and if you're out and about, take a look at them. We've got to feel pretty good about what's happening here in the city, and it looks like we're going to have a record year in building permits, so it's, we're really lucky compared to some other communities, so really happy about that.
So Larry, have we heard anything about the project proposed on the Lower Washington Avenue in terms of?
They got the crane over there today, taking the
They did?
building out.
Okay. Okay.
I can personally report it.
You looked out the window, did you?
You got something doing for the day then, huh? Keep you busy?
Mayor, there are cookies and stuff in the back if we want to do that in between our,
Well, why don't we, let's go ahead and adjourn the meeting, and then we'll have some cookies and visit with Barb a little bit, and then we'll reconvene. We've got about 15 minutes, I think, right?
I sent you that.
Meeting of the Detroit Lakes City Council is reconvened, and is it 6:01? Somebody say, tell me it's 6:01.
601.
Okay, 6:01, so at this time, I'm gonna turn it over to the Finance Committee Chairman, Dan Wenner, because we're going to have a couple more items taken care of on the agenda.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm gonna turn it over to our accountant, Pam Slipka, to cover our budget presentation for the 2018 budget.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Mayor Brent and city council members and members of the audience. I'm Pam Slifka. I'm the finance officer for the city of Detroit Lakes. Tonight, we're going to go through our 2018 budget presentation. The first slide shows you what our tax levy is proposed for 2019, and what our actual tax levy was for 2018. Our tax levy for 2018 total was $5,114, and our tax levy proposed for 2019 is $5,498 and $498,000, 426. Oh, jeez. $5,498,426. That is an increase of $384,417, or an increase of 7.52%. Now, if you bear with me, we'll walk through this and you can see where the increases are and why we had the increases and how they're going to impact your taxes at the end. This year, the reasons for the increase are, we had an increase in our health insurance costs of 6%. If you recall, over the last 3 years, the city has had a 0% increase on our health insurance. And this year, we did get a 6% increase, so that accounts for about $30,000. There was a decrease in our local government aid payment from the state of Minnesota of about $69,000. The city council approved adding one more police officer to our staff at the police department, and that officer all in costs about an extra $100,000. Then we had an increase in our capital funds for the airport expansion project of $7,500. Another increase in our capital funds for police equipment to help with purchasing the new vehicles and the equipment that the police needs on an ongoing basis. And there was also an increase in our capital reserve for the new public works facility in the amount of $102,500. And then an increase for our debt service, which is paid on our special assessment bonds, and that increase was $90,000. This screen shows our taxable market value. So in 2018, the city of Detroit Lakes taxable market value was $1,078,503,900. In 2019, that increased to $1,144,078,200. That was an increase of $65 million, or 6.1%. From that taxable market value, the state does some calculations and they come up with a total tax capacity number. So the tax capacity for the city of Detroit Lakes went up from $13 million to $14 million, an increase of over $900,000, or 7.1%. From that, you deduct our tax increment financing to come up with a net tax capacity. Our net tax capacity increased by $918,000 to $13,243,000. That's an increase in our net tax capacity of 7.45%. Our total tax levy, which we looked at on a previous screen, increased by $384,417, or 7.52%. So when you divide the total tax levy by the net tax capacity, you get the city tax capacity rate, and that is 41.519% for 2019. In 2018, it was 41.493%. So a very, very small increase. Also, the closer your net tax capacity number, your increase percentage is to your total tax levy increase percentage, the closer you are to a zero increase on your taxes, assuming your taxable market value stays the same. As you can see, the two numbers, the 7.45 and the 7.52, are very close together. So what this really means in a nutshell is that the increase on a $140,000 home, assuming that the taxable market value doesn't change, is going to be about 31 cents. And the increase on a $500,000 commercial business will amount to about $5.58. This screen shows you what our governmental expenditures are, 2018 versus 2019. Both are the budgeted numbers. I've highlighted the two areas that show a large change. One of them is our airport capital construction account, which has gone down $2 million. Our 2019 grant is for less money. There will be less work done overall on the airport. So the grant funding has gone down $2 million. We'll be spending $2 million less out there this year, this coming year. And then our debt service fund is going up $1.4 million. And the reason for that is when interest rates have been low, we've been refunding bonds at lower interest rates. Those refundings have saved us about $2 million. but we have one refunding bond that's coming due in 2019 that we have to pay off. And that's going to increase our debt service fund expenditures by about $1.7 million. So the net overall effect is that our 2018 adopted budget versus the 2019 proposed budget, we will decrease our expenditures by $750,000. This slide shows our local government aid. One of the main sources the city has, well, two main sources the city has of funding the services that we provide are a tax levy and local government aid. This schedule shows you what our local government aid was from 1997 through 2019. And if you look at the yellow highlighted cell, in 2001, our LGA payment for that year was $1,621,000. In 2019, our payment is $632,000. So we've lost $1 million compared to what we got back in 2001 between the two. So if you look at the actual totals of what we received from 2001 to 2019, we received $17,774,000. If we would have received that $1,621,000 every year for those 19 years, we would have gotten paid $30,804,000. So we've lost $13 million in our LGA over those 19 years. Now there's good news to that and bad news. The good news piece of it is we have figured out as a city how to provide our services more efficiently and effectively and for lower cost. We've had to. We've become more self-reliant, and the bad news is our LGA keeps going down. So hopefully we can get that changed. Okay, one item I'd like to point out is, we talked about, we've got two main sources of revenue for the city, and that is our levy and our LGA. We also, in the city of Detroit Lakes, are very, very fortunate to have annual contributions that come to us from our enterprise funds. The city electric utility in 2018 contributed $585,000 to the general fund. That's in some circles known as a pilot payment, a payment in lieu of taxes, but they do provide $585,000 transfer into our general fund. And our city municipal liquor store, also known as Lakes Liquor, provided $560,000 to our general fund in 2018. So between the two enterprise funds, they transferred $1,145,000 to the general fund. So if you add that $1,145,000 to our city tax levy last year of $5,114,000, the actual expenditures that we covered through our levy and our transfers were $6,259,000. If those transfers went away and we didn't get that money from the liquor store or the electric utility, we would have to increase our levy by 22.4% to cover those, to cover the money that we no longer got. There is a lot of data on this screen, and I'm gonna go up here and use my pointer. I don't know that it'll do a lot of good, but the state of Minnesota puts together some data from all of the different cities, and we typically look at 10 cities in our western Minnesota region and compare ourselves to them. The cities that we typically look at are Moorhead, Fergus Falls, Brainerd, Bemidji, East Grand Forks, Crookston, Thief River Falls, Alexandria, Baxter, and then of course Detroit Lakes. The state wasn't able to provide that information this year, so we did our own canvassing, and we got information back from all of the cities except for Bemidji and Thief River Falls, and so you will see those highlighted in red. They did not provide us any comparables. So there's a few interesting things to look at here. If you look at population, the first line shows the population. Our population in Detroit Lakes for 2017, which has got to do with our levy payable in 2018, our population was 9,290 people. The closest city to us then in population is Grand Forks at 8,631 people. But if you look at total tax capacity, which is the next line over, the city of Detroit Lakes has a $13 million total tax capacity. The closest one to us is Baxter, and in past years, Fergus Falls has always had a tax capacity higher than we have. We have surpassed their tax capacity. So that means our tax base is growing, our economic base is growing here in town. So if you look at the total tax capacity, we are at 12,324,000. Baxter's at 11,000,006, and Fergus Falls is at 10,480,000. There's only two cities who have a tax capacity greater than we do, and that is Moorhead and Alexandria, and I think we all would have expected those to be bigger than we were. Based on population, they are the two largest cities up there. The next section of data has to do with the tax rate. So every taxing entity has their own tax rate. The county has a tax rate, the school has their own tax rate, then there's some special taxing districts like the watershed districts, and then the city has a tax rate. And earlier we talked about the fact that we arrived at a 41.59% tax rate for the city. Becker County for 2017 pay 2018 had a 38.52% tax rate. The school district here had a 9.23% tax rate, and special districts were 1.59. So in the city of Detroit Lakes, all in, we have a total tax rate of 90.93%. If you look at all the rest of the cities in this study, the only city, the closest city to us on a tax rate is Baxter at 108.28%. We're the only city whose tax rate is below 100% all in. Actually, if you look at some of the individual cities, you'll see that Brainerd's at 77.42%. East Grand Forks is at 68.5%. There's two cities that are lower than we are, although we're very close, and that again is Moorhead and Alexandria. They are 40.24 and 40.78. So then we look at LGA and the levy. We like to look at those two because they're the two largest sources of revenue for each city, and we total those up. So total LGA and tax levy for the city of Detroit Lakes is $5,815,000. City of Moorhead, $20,800,000. Fergus Falls, $9,650,000. Brainerd, $9 million. East Grand Forks, $7 million. You look across that line, and the only city that is close to us is Crookston. We're both in the high $5 million. Everybody else is getting more LGA and levy than we are to take care of covering their expenses. So then we break down the LGA per capita and the tax levy per capita. The lowest per capita rate in all of the cities that we look at is Moorhead, and Moorhead is at $482. The second one is Alexandria at $603. And then comes the city of Detroit Lakes, third lowest at $626. And you can go up from there, but the highest city's per capita rate is $847, which is East Grand Forks. We typically have some averages to compare ourselves to. We don't have any state averages to compare ourselves to this time, So I've just had to add a few averages across here on this worksheet to show you what the averages of just the 8 cities that we're dealing with and how we compare to those. Okay. This screen shows what the average tax, property taxes would be on a $140,000 home, a $250,000 home, and a $500,000 commercial or industrial property. We have the first column of numbers shows you what the next net tax capacity has been for the city of Detroit Lakes since 2002. So back in 2002, it was just over $4 million. Our tax capacity has grown by 200% since then, and in the last 16 years. And so our tax capacity again is $13,243,000. And if you look at over on the 3 right-hand columns, you can see that on a $140,000 home in 2018, you would be paying city taxes of $478.66. And based on our preliminary proposed budget here, you would be paying $478.97 if your valuation stayed the same, which is an increase of 31 cents. $1.42 is the increase on a $250,000 home, and $3,843.68 on a $500,000 commercial property, which is an increase of $5.58. Now the last line on the bottom that I'd like to point out to you is, if we did not have those contributions from our enterprise funds, the $1,145,000, on a $140,000 home, instead of paying $478.97, you'd be paying $586.21. On a $250,000 home, you would be paying $1,196.46, and on a $500,000 commercial or industrial property, you'd be paying $4,700. So the point is that those transfers have a huge impact on the taxes that we pay in this city. Okay, this kind of looks at how we calculate our residential taxes. The assessor goes out and comes up with an estimated tax value of your home. Say it's $140,000. The state of Minnesota allows a market value exclusion, which is a sliding scale. I think it starts at about a $72,000 home, and I think it phases out at about a $400,000 home. About a $140,000 home, you're allowed $24,640 exclusion. So the adjusted market value of your home is then $115,360. Homesteads have a class rate, a state assigned class rate of 0.01. So then you multiply your adjusted market value times that homestead class rate. And so the tax capacity of your home is $1,153.60. And then you multiply that times the city tax rate of 41.52%, and that's how you come up with your net city tax on a $140,000 home of $478.97. Okay, so the city levies in all kinds of different funds. We have different operating accounts, so to speak. So we levy $55,000 for the sports arena, for example, which is shown in the second numerical column. We levy $193,000 for snow removal. We levy $284,000 for our parks. And what we did is we came up with a percentage. So each one of those levies added together come up to our total of $5,498,000. So the percentages are shown off on the right-hand side. So if you multiply that percentage of the levy against the total taxes on that $140,000 home, you will see that the levy that you are, the portion of your levy that you're paying for the development authority is $1.71. The portion of the levy that you're paying for the DLCCC is $4.36 a year. $4.80 for the sports arena. If you go all the way down to the bottom, you're paying $91.80 for police protection. You're paying $95.39 to help us reduce our debt service on our infrastructure. And these slides also are available if you'd like to take them home or look at them. So this kind of shows you in chart form how the breakdown is of your $478 that you're paying in on that $140,000 home. You go all the way from $1.71 from the development authority to $95 for your debt service infrastructure payments. So if you break that down and divide it by 12, we're gonna look at the monthly cost now. So how much do you pay a month for police protection? $7.65. Seems pretty reasonable. How much do you pay a month for park maintenance? $2.06. How much a month do you pay for snow removal? $1.40. So you can walk right through those individual items. How much do you pay a month for the fire department, for fire protection for your home? 79 cents. So it's kind of interesting to look through that and say, okay, how much am I really paying for the services that I get? And this last screen, and I know you're all happy about this, this last screen shows you, I've tried to kind of come up with an average cost for some of the monthly items that our households have, maybe $140,000 home. So we all have garbage pickup, and I think that a reasonable number to have your garbage picked up these days is $24.92 a month. The property taxes, if you go back and divide that $478 by 12 months, it's $39.91 a month. So you're paying $39.91 for property taxes, city property taxes. Natural gas averages probably $68 a month. Your electric bill, average $77 a month. Water and sanitary sewer, about $89 a month. And then all of us have got smartphones, so I think a smartphone bill for a family of two is right around $120. And then if you've got cable, internet, and phone service, you're probably paying around $140 a month. So out of $559 or $560 in monthly expenses, you can see only $40 of that goes toward your city taxes. It's the second lowest cost there is. We're just this much higher than getting your garbage picked up. So that's all I've got to share with you. If anybody has any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments for Pam regarding our 2018 budget presentation? Well, Pam, these are really, this is really good information. I was doing a little calculating, and I know we don't figure our food and beverage tax into our contribution towards our property taxes, but if we had to use, property tax money to fund some of the things that the food and beverage tax is funding, I calculated about 8 or 9 additional percent that would be on our tax levy for
That's
that.
correct.
So
Yep.
I don't know if that's got to be pretty close, right?
Yeah, it would be about $450,000 a year, so.
Yeah.
Yep.
Any questions or comments?
Well, I'd just like to say that, looking at all three bodies of government, the Becker County, the school district, and the city, we're the lowest or next to the lowest of all these towns. And so I think all three groups have done a pretty good job for their taxpayers here in our area, keeping the taxes low and still providing very good services. And it's a very good report, Pam.
Thank you.
I think the most amazing part of it is that loss of LGA. I mean, that's a lot of money that we've had to absorb, and find other ways to operate, and so it's pretty cool stuff. Well, thank you. Dan, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Your Honor. So, the Finance Committee spent a couple of months refining and reviewing the budget. I want to thank the rest of the Finance Committee and the other members of the council who showed up at 7 o'clock in the morning this summer to put this budget together along with the city staff. I will say that the committee had reviewed the budget again last month in a final review discussion on it today. The committee recommends approval of the budget and levy, and I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve a resolution adopting the final 2019 budget and the final 2018 tax levy collectible in 2019. Further discussion or any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion is carried. And I would echo your sentiments to the Budget Committee. Thank you for all your work, and thank you, Pam, for all your work, and thank you for a great presentation tonight. And with that,
Sorry, it went a little longer.
well, that's all right. With that, I think the business of the council is concluded, but Matt, you had something you wanted to bring up.
Yes, one thing I'd like to bring up is the Becker County is having their 5-year strategic plan for as far as roads and infrastructure on December 13th at 6 o'clock at the courthouse. I know that it affects some of the roads and constituents inside Detroit Lakes, so just wanted to get that out to everybody. So, thank you.
Jamie, do you have anything else? Dan?
I'm sorry, I want to say thanks to Barb for her service, and, you know, you had a strong connection to the community, and I always appreciate that.
Dan? Madeline? Dan?
Nothing else, Your Honor.
Ron?
Yeah, just nice serving with you, Barb, and best of luck to you in the future.
Absolutely.
You're gonna be thinking about us when you're traveling around, enjoying yourself? I hope so.
It's been a pleasure to be on the city council, and I've enjoyed it, and I appreciate all of the support and encouragement, and would encourage anybody else to get involved. It's been very good.
Well, you've done a nice job, thank you. Bruce?
Ditto what everybody else said about Barb, as long as Barb brought up about participation. You mentioned earlier about planning commission. I think you're, as a mayor, you're always good about encouraging the public to contact you or someone at City Hall, because we have these openings.
Sure.
And we'd love to have people in the public step forward and volunteer for communities.
Thank you. Anything else from city staff? The business of this council has come to a conclusion. The meeting is adjourned.